Hey there, in today's video I'm going to talk about how perfect practice and perfect preparation equals perfect performance. Perfect performance in a marathon depends on your expectations as to what you regard as perfect, and it starts for me with picking the marathon to match whatever expectations I might have. If I wanted to run a personal best or the fastest marathon I could, I'd probably pick Valencia in Spain. I haven't run it, but lots of records have been set there. So if I was picking a fast marathon, the fastest one I could do, that's probably the one I would pick. You might pick one for scenery. I'm doing that in the next one, which it's a noted Boston qualifier, the Jack and Jill Marathon in Washington State. It's a noted Boston qualifier, but it also has superb scenery. And although my expectation was initially for qualifying for Boston, it's now to look at the scenery. But you might have other expectations. It could be that you just want to get the 6th star on your marathon journey. So you pick the marathon to match the expectations you have for whatever performance you want. Once I've picked the marathon, I pick the hotel. Thanks to Chris for the tip for the Boston Marathon. As soon as I qualified, I went on and I booked the hotel for next spring, even though the registration for the race hasn't happened. You can always, most hotel reservations, you can pull out closer to the date if that happens with minimal cost. So yeah, as the hotels ramp up, it's too late getting close to the race to book the hotel. The next thing is to study the route. I've made mistakes several times. The first one I remember running the Windsor Half Marathon many years ago and coming down from a hill, and there was a finishing straight and not realizing how long it was. It's very hard to, when you're in the race, it's very hard to judge the distance to the finish. So now that's one of the first things I do is I assess the finish line. In Chicago, I didn't do enough memorizing the route of the Chicago Marathon. And if I don't know where I'm going, that gets unsettling for me. So now what I do all the time is I'll look on Google Maps, I'll look on Apple Maps, I'll research as much as I can about the finish, and certainly in 2 of them, in Buckeye, Arizona, where I drove the course in advance and memorized it. Rotterdam, I went through Street View and endless there was a couple of videos about it, but I still knew the course pretty much as I was running it along. Although you're just running the same number of kilometers or miles, it's still somehow, unless I know where I'm going, I get confused, and that any sort of mental throwing off inhibits my performance. But again, with the next marathon I'm going to be running, I'm going to go and assess the finish line before I get there in Washington. And there's I think it's nearly over 2 mile tunnel at the start. So I'm going to run that, and a couple of days before that, certainly go through it to know, does the headlamp work and what the surface is. So yeah, practice as much as you can. Studying the route is really important to me. The next thing I try to prepare for is the climate. In Seattle, if it was taking place tomorrow, it's taking place in 2 weeks' time, it's 13 degrees at the start time of 6 a.m. and it'll get to 24 degrees, at least predicted by 10 a.m. when I would be expecting to finish in and around. So I've got to plan to be there in clothes that are suitable at 13 degrees, or I can tolerate my singlet at 13 degrees, knowing that by the time I finish at 10 or thereabouts, I'm at the right temperature. That's really important to me. I went out practicing the other night here in Dublin. It was a horrible wet day and it turned into a very misty, wet evening, and I thought, Seattle, it's perfect for my practice for Seattle, where it's often known to be misty rain. I've never been to Seattle before, but I've seen enough stories and read enough books to figure out it's a rainy, wet city sometimes. Assessing the time zone is really important. I love doing marathons in the United States because you fly over. I'll always fly over 3 or 4 days in advance, and I pretty much try and stay on Irish time. If we kick off or the race starts at 6 a.m. in the morning, well, that's 2 p.m. in the Irish afternoon. So when I fly over there, that means that if I want to get up early to eat my breakfast, get from the hotel to the start line, all of that stuff, I need to take a bus. There's various things I need to do, but that makes it perfect. So what I'm going to do when I get over there is stay in the Irish time zone until the marathon is finished, and then see what I can get out of the rest of the trip for the next 3 or 4 days. And one of the things I think is in preparation is practicing sleeping. It sounds crazy, but Yeah, you need to get the sleeping nailed down as much as you can in advance. There's all sorts of techniques on the internet, on the various apps that I have, that ones that come with this ring or the watches. There's always sleep advice, but nailing that down is really important. Another thing that's really important for me to get right is my hydration, and I do that at least a week out from the race. I'm flying on a Tuesday and I run on a Saturday, but I'll start a couple of days in advance. I'll be very careful on the plane. I'll be monitoring so that I'm not sort of trying to load on a whole lot of water the day before, but that I'm always hydrated correctly throughout. And again, I've got the kit. Now, I suppose in the perfect practice, there's just the idea of nothing new on the day. I haven't got my marathon kit yet. I will run in the same socks. I always run in, well, I don't always run, but I've mainly run marathons in on running mid socks. I wear a pair of those. I'm planning to wear a non-running hat. I've done that several times. I'm getting a sore top. I've always run my marathons, or apart from Berlin, and I love them. They're absolutely perfect for me. And then I'm as ever playing around with the shorts, but I'll play around in advance. I won't be taking any chances on the day, but I'll also be bringing backup kit. So I'm not 100% certain on the shoes. I think I am, but I'll probably bring a couple of kits just in case when I get there conditions are not what I expect them to be. So that's some of the things I'm going to do. I know it could possibly rain, and it'll be various things. So I'll bring a range of kits, probably a couple of different pairs of shoes to try and do that. Drinking water is really important, and again, I will read all of the race conditions to see where the water stations are. From rereading it, it seems that there's one every 2 miles. There's water at all of those, and there's Gatorade at most of them. So that's actually quite useful for me to have some Gatorade in with the water, which I'll probably take on every second stop. I'll also practice how to drink the water by squeezing the cup, and doing it that way is something that I've practiced in previous marathons. I'll do that again. But yeah, having that is really important, that I've got the hydration strategy down. I'm going to bring Morton with me. I always use Morton gel. I don't particularly like it, as I've said many times, but it's perfect for me. I never have any GI issues, and I will be using that. There is also I know I'm going to one of the largest countries in the world, and there's endless Walmarts, but I will be bringing some oatmeal with me. I have some oatmeal from the last time, little sachets, just the stuff that I usually have, just in case. Chances are it'll be in the hotel, but I'm not going to risk that. I'm going to bring it because I know it really works. I'll have a banana and a raisin. I know I can go get those very easily, and almost every hotel breakfast will have those. I'm also, coffee lovers would hate me, I'm bringing coffee to Seattle, and not just coffee. I mean, who brings coffee to Seattle apart from me? But I'm bringing instant coffee. But I'm not bringing the instant coffee because I like the taste of the coffee. I do, as it happens, but I'm bringing it because I know that if I drink that on the morning at a certain time, in a certain quantity, in a certain strength, I'm going to be good to go from a toilet point of view. So it's always worked for me. So I have little sachets. Usually I bring a jar. I've got little sachets. I'm going to do those. The pre-race preparations of all of that is really important. It's really important for me. I've already written out the time schedule of what time I need to get up, what time I need to leave the hotel, how far the drive is, how I get onto the bus, what time the buses are, and where you park, and all that. All that's worked out in advance so that when I get there, I can just concentrate on the race. And part of the preparation is reading all the rules. So for instance, in this particular one, there's a head torch. You need to wear a head torch. So I've bought that, but I'm going to practice that when I get there in the actual conditions, turning it on and off, which level of brightness works. I know it'll be different. There'll be a lot of people running and they'll all have head torches. So there'll be a little bit of adjustment about that. But that is really important to me. It's very important that I visit the course in advance, and it's along a trail, so there's only a few parts you can visit in advance, but I plan to visit the start, the end, and anything I can in between a couple of days beforehand. And so I want to visit it, and then I want to visualize it. Before every marathon, I try to visualize, so I found the course, what's going to happen at this point, what's going to happen at that point, where are the weak points, where are the hills. I think there's a 15-foot rise after on mile 8. And that's another thing I'll have to figure out, because I know kilometers and miles In most American races, there'll just be mile markers rather than kilometer markers, and I know how to translate. But in the middle of a race, and particularly after a 2 mile run in a tunnel with a GPS on this and a GPS on that, might be slightly out. That's something I'm trying to visualize and prepare for. Again, I'll probably walk this tunnel or run the tunnel and just try and see in advance. But yeah, for me, the perfect practice makes perfect, as does the perfect preparation. I'm going to visualize it, and as with all my previous marathons, I'm going to try and see in advance what could go wrong and what should go right. So review all the previous ones and then run. See you next week. Thanks for your support.